Hello my friends, and welcome to another video. And for those of you who are new to my channel, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that by the end of the video you will consider subscribing. I post 1 to 2 videos each week on either alcohol ink, watercolor, or other art projects. In today's video, I'm going to share with you some watercolors that I have wanted for so long. And I finally broke down and bought them. I have been holding on to these gift cards that I got for Christmas for so long, and finally I got my watercolors. Now these are, I would say they're not your typical watercolor. I've heard so many wonderful things about them that I was so curious to try them. So let me tell you about them. These are Kuretake Gansai Tombi watercolor paints, and I'm sure I butchered that name, but that's about as close as I'll get to getting it right. They are traditional Japanese pan watercolors, and what made them so interesting for me is that I heard that they can be highly opaque, almost like a gouache if you use less water, or they can be transparent like watercolor if you use more water. So I was hooked. I had to have them. And they come in these large pans because they're made to be used with large brushes. And you can see I bought 2 sets. The one on the left is your traditional colors, and the one on the left is called the Art Nouveau set, and it has more pastel-like colors. And it comes in this box. It's made of cardboard. It's pretty sturdy. And on the inside of the lid, it has a color swatching card that you can use, but it's not watercolor paper, so I decided that I would make my own swatch card. And now you can see I'm lifting this little plastic cover that comes on it, and if you wanted to, I suppose you could use it to mix some colors, but it's kind of flimsy. So I prefer to use a palette if necessary, or just mix the paint on the paper. I'll just use that plastic cover to cover the paints once I'm finished using them, because you can see the pans are pretty large, and I would say, if I had to guess, I would say that they are half filled with paint. However, what they're sitting in is made of cardboard, so keeping that lid on them in case you drop them will be really helpful. But while I did do that, I dropped them and they scattered all over the place, so I had to put them back in order. And the good thing is that the number is written on that cardboard part that I'm pointing to, but it's also printed on the back of each of the pans, so it was just very easy to put them back where they belonged. So you can see here I made my own swatch card, and I'm going to be using a black marker to make a line in each one of those squares, because as I mentioned earlier, these paints are supposed to be kind of like a gouache also. So I wanted to see how much they would cover up the black lines. And I usually do that when I swatch out my watercolors also. So you can see I sprayed the paints to activate them, and one of the things that I read was that these paints are very easily activated, and I found that to be very true. Now to swatch my colors, I'm going to use an aqua brush. I like using an aqua brush for some reason to swatch my paints. I'll never use one of my good brushes to do that. So here I've drawn the black lines, and now I am going to start swatching. And as I'm swatching, notice how these paints do cover that black line, almost like a gouache. And as I am filling out each little square, to start with, I'm picking up a very heavy consistency of the paint, and I'm filling in about 1/3 of the square. Then I'll dip the brush in the water, releasing some pigment, and I'll do another 1/3 of the square. And then I dip the brush in water one last time, and I fill in the last 1/3 of the square. So you can see I have a heavy, a medium, and a light consistency in each square. And this will really be helpful when you're trying to select your colors for your paintings. But look how it covers up that black line. Not all of them covered it up well, but I would say that the majority of them did. So it does work like a gouache if you use less water, which is fascinating to me. And after I finish swatching them, I'm going to do this fun little painting, and we're going to also use Posca pens for the painting, so it should be a lot of fun. I hope you stick around to watch, and then I'll give you my final thoughts on these paints. All right, so you can see I've done a very simple drawing on my paper. I'm doing a landscape. I don't know why these paints inspire me to do a landscape, which is not something that I normally do, but just the texture of these paints made me want to do a landscape. So I have a few hills, some trees, and a couple of little houses, and we're going to start the painting. First, I wanted to try the wet and wet technique. I wanted to see how these colors blend together and how they spread in the water. And what I found is that they don't move the same as your typical watercolor. They kind of stay in place, but as they dry, they blend together. You'll have to see what I mean. It's not like your typical watercolor, but I found them to be a lot of fun to work with, and I'm really looking forward to creating more paintings with these paints. You can see in the sky, the paper was pretty wet, but the paint did not blend together very well, but as it dried, the effect was still very pretty. And I'm not painting on 100% cotton watercolor paper, because the paper that I have is mostly cold press, and from what I understand, it's best to use these paints on a smooth paper. So this is Strathmore watercolor paper. It's pretty inexpensive, but it's better than using like Canson, I think. So, all right, I tried the wet and wet technique, and at the bottom hill there, I just blended the colors on the paper. Now here, I'm adding a heavy consistency to do the roofs of the house. And also here for this hill, you can see I'm adding a heavy consistency, and then I'm just dipping my brush into the water and blending out that color over the rest of the area, and also dropping in some different colors as well. But again, the colors don't blend the same as watercolor. It almost feels like it's got a chalky consistency when you're applying it on the paper, but it's not chalky. It's actually very, very smooth and creamy. And as I mentioned, they activate very easily. They just do not move the same as your typical watercolor paper. I know I've said that a few times, but I still really, really enjoyed using them. So you can see I'm adding the heavy consistency, almost a gouache-like consistency on the left-hand side, and then I'm just dipping my brush into the water and blending it out to the other end of that tree and dropping in a little bit of a darker color in there, or a different color in the trees as well, for a little bit of texture. And you can see that once it's drying, it has the paint, because it doesn't blend like regular watercolor, it almost gives texture to your painting, if that makes sense. All right, so I did wait for the paper to completely dry, and I brought out my Posca pens, and I am going to outline all the trees, the houses, and the hills, and I am going to be adding a little embellishment to each of the trees, the houses, and the hills as well. Now, I'm sure there's a name for this type of painting. I'm not sure what it is, but I can tell you that it is so much fun to do this. It's therapeutic. And as I mentioned, this paint inspired me to create this painting, and I'm already thinking of other landscape paintings that I can create with this paint. Well, while you watch me paint this, I'll remind you that all the products will be listed in the description box if you'd like to take a look and learn a little bit more about them. Also, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your interaction is so helpful to my channel. It's a really great way to show your support, and I appreciate it more than I can tell you. And check out our Facebook group, Vivo Vintage Design Tutorials. You can post your versions of the paintings and techniques learned on this channel. I'm very active in the group. We have such a wonderful group of members. They're so supportive and so talented. They'll definitely make you feel good. So I hope you consider joining. So you can see here, now getting back to the painting, that I am using the Posca pens to create texture on all the little hills and the trees. And this is so much fun. Like, you just can't do anything wrong. And when you're finished, you have the most adorable painting. You don't even have to be able to draw well to do something like this. All right, so we are getting close to the end of the video. So if I had to rate these paints on a scale from 1 to 10, I would rate them an 8. They are, again, different from your typical watercolor, but they are a lot of fun to use. The fact that I can use it as a gouache or use it almost like a typical watercolor makes them very interesting and different to work with. I love the vibrancy of the colors. The paints are very creamy. They activate very quickly. They're not that expensive. And it's fun to try different stuff. I'm really glad that I bought them. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any questions about anything that I spoke of in this video. I'll be sure to get back to you. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye.